Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakadash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and salutations to the Akim who are tuning into these videos. In this video, I wanted to speak about how the IOIC is starting to go into the MLTB, but you can watch all of their videos and still have confusion. They don't give you the breakdown freely as we at Great Millstone have been given it for 30 plus years. And what this elder brother from the LA camp was going into in this video that I'm going to play a little bit of it is that you have other people who have received that understanding, or at least could see that this device that Esau Edom is getting ready to implement and to put into all of this infrastructure is the MOTB that the scriptures are speaking about. And we have to tippy toe and hide what we're actually speaking about, and have to basically allude to it. And that all was because of what happened in 2020, which that was all just a trial run for what they're literally getting ready to do. And this ties to scriptures, something that us set up as prophets to see these things before they happen, and as watchmen to sound the alarm for these things, because this is something that the shepherds need to tell the flock, need to warn them, need to take care of them from the ravenous wolves. And there's going to be a whole bunch of types of wolves. Some of them are wolves in sheep's clothing. And specifically, like in this video, just wanted to highlight just from this thumbnail, the IOIC. They're going off on the MOTB compilation. But I really wanted to play this video right here, because you have these other people, they might be Edomites, might be Israelite foreigners, but nonetheless, they're speaking about these things and doing what we're doing, being watchmen and telling the flock about this thing that we are told, commanded not to take. So I'm going to play a bit of this video.
Everybody to today's show. Every single time we hear a story like this, it needs to be covered, because every time a big chain, whether it's Sam's Club or in the future Walmart, Target, these big stores, every time we see them inch away from cash and force you into using digital payments only, we know that we're getting closer and closer to the finish line. Because remember, as the Bible tells us in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verses 16 through 18, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 600 threescore and six. So if you don't understand what we're headed towards.
All right, so I'm just going to play it from that. I recommend watching this video because the elder brother goes in speaking about these things, because you got a lot of these pastors who are just settled on their lease when we're supposed to be speaking about this. We should be fervent and prophesying about this, because this is going into literally what Ezekiel was speaking about, what Joel was going through, what Jeremiah was going through. And when we say these things week in and week out on the highways and hedges, we have all the pictures and the signs, and then we can speak about what's happening on the news, making all these things plain upon tables freely, that we receive this freely, we are giving it to you by sounding this alarm. You still have 2/3 of the nation of Israel who disregard that, or scoff and mock at us, and saying that when they do have that hemel to be out there, they're going to take it full-fledged. Well, ultimately, those are the 2/3, and we did our job just like what Ezekiel did back in the day. And so the former things are happening now again, but now this is the last go-around, because in the book of Revelation, as that guy in that video that I was just playing in, he read it in Revelation 13 and 16. Esau Edom is going to cause all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive that charagma. And so I'm going to read this precept here, starting in Titus 1 and 9, because we have to be fervent in this thing. We can't just be lukewarm or basically have our attention drawn away. We have to be focused on the mission that we were sent out here to do, and ultimately is to feed Yahushai's sheep. He emphasized that 3 times to Peter. So I'm going to start out here and reading this in Titus 1 and 9. It says, holding fast the faithful word as he hath been taught, that he may be able by sound doctrine both to exhort and to convince the gainsayers. And this is something that we do on the highways and hedges, whether they hear or whether they forbear. One thing is that we're out there on the highways and hedges because the elect is still being sealed and built up in the spirit. Because in Revelation 7, it speaks about the 4 winds, and that the angels are holding back that destruction until the elect have this in their mind, so that we have wisdom and knowledge. It's going to keep us stable in these last days. That's what's going to keep us from taking this MOTB during the hour of temptation, because all hell is literally about to break loose. And in the midst of all that, Esau Edom is going to try to present to you the MOTB. But we are wise and privy to this devil's deceptions and his wicked devices. And you, having all readiness in mind, that you should want this sound doctrine, because we break it down plainly upon tables what it is and what that word mark is when you go into the Greek. But I'm going to read this from Titus 1 and 9, because this is the spirit that you should be in. It says, holding fast the faithful word as he hath been taught, that he may be able by sound doctrine both to exhort and to convince the gainsayers. And IOIC is not convincing any gainsayers with their bogus breakdown. They got a plethora of breakdowns. They're double-minded when it comes to their breakdowns. But here at Garrett Millstone, we make sure to edify each other before we edify you. We make sure that what we're speaking is sound doctrine. That's why we have the body, the ministry to each other from our left and our right, rehearsing these righteous acts, iron sharpening iron. And in the spirit, when Yahweh Bashem Yahushai sees that, he rejoices, because he is there amongst us. When 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, there he is in the midst. Roughly paraphrasing that precept. Because, this is a spiritual thing. So we're out there sounding this alarm with sound doctrine. And it says, continuing on from right here, both to exhort and to convince the gainsayers. But of course, we're not going to be worried about those who disregard this message. We are only worried about the elect, pursuing to Revelation 7. That's all the Heavenly Father needs and wants ultimately, and that he sent this invitation to. He only wants the 144,000 elect to be sealed with this doctrine in their minds. And knowing this, that we persuade men, knowing the terror of the Lord, we persuade men. But then of the hopeful elect who hear and come across this word, they know not to take that MOTB. And that right there is a victory for Yahweh Bashem Yahushai and his elect. Because if you're going to get anything from what you're seeing from these videos, is to not take that MOTB, not to bend the knee to the image of Baal. All right, so continuing on here, this is in Titus 1 and let's see. So we're from verse 9. Okay, continue on. Verse 10, it says, for there are many unruly and vain talkers and deceivers, especially they of the circumcision. So I was speaking about IOIC and all these other various camps, because it's we're at the last end of it. Everybody can see the end of the finish line now. So people really have no excuse. If you come up against our doctrine and the ministry that we're a part of, it's really because you're moved in the spirit of Satan, and you don't have the love of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai in you to receive this with all meekness. You're basically just a vain talker, a deceiver. And the scriptures highlights there, it says, especially they of the circumcision. Because we're not thinking it's strange when we're seeing these things. This is literally the prophecies of the scriptures coming to fruition. So just because a person's wearing fringes and wearing a purple shirt or whatever, or they walk by our camp and say shalom or whatever, that doesn't really mean anything. It really means something if you actually do this when push comes to shove. And for that, we're just convincing you. We're not going to be able to do this for you because this hour of temptation is going to fall upon all of us individually. So that's why when we're out there on the highways and hedges, we say, with all that getting, get understanding. Get that wisdom, knowledge, understanding now while Yahweh Bashim Shai may be found. So I'm going to continue on in verse 10. It says, for there are many unruly and vain talkers and deceivers, especially they of the circumcision, whose mouths must be stopped, who subvert whole houses, teaching things which they ought not, for filthy lucre's sake. One of themselves, even a prophet of their own, said, the Cretians are always liars, evil beasts, slow bellies. But this is just highlighting of amongst the circumcision that we're going to have wolves in sheep's clothing. We're going to have agents. We're going to have people who aren't really about this ministry, who are basically lukewarm. But the Spirit is seeing everything, and the Spirit is going to spew those people out of the mouth of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. Because all those people, especially those amongst the circumcision, are going to be exposed. And then when that hour of temptation happens, we'll see if these people are really about this. If they were really about this when you're putting all this hours into this, if you're really trusting Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai rather than Esau Edom. And with all these precepts, wisdom, knowledge, understanding, these things keep you stable in those times. Because even if you're put through a trial, a tribulation of tests for your faith, you're not going to bend the knee. Because all you have to do is recount what happened in the scriptures. All right, so I'm going to read this precept in Jeremiah 23, verse 1. It says, woe be unto the pastors that destroy and scatter the sheep of my pastures, saith the Lord. Therefore, thus saith the Lord, Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai power of Israel, against the pastors that feed my people. Ye have scattered my flock and driven them away, and have not visited them. Behold, Asaki says, behold, I will visit upon you the evil of your doings, saith the Lord, Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai. So ultimately, every idle word that comes up against the men of the Lord, any vain talkers, scoffers, scorners, whose mouths must be shut, will be shut in that day. Especially when all hell breaks loose. You're going to see these people running to and fro through the city trying to look for the prophets. But right now, we're teaching. We're set up to teach this word and sound this alarm. But when the word comes, that it's the famine of the word, we're not going to be out there. And so that's why we always bring up that precept in Isaiah 55 or in Isaiah 34. It's just speaking about getting this understanding now while you have time. This is in Joel 2 and 1. It says, blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord, Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, cometh, for it is nigh at hand. And this right here ties into the vibration, the motivation, and what we do is prophesying unto the nation of Zion, the nation of Israel, the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, because this message is really out to y'all, those who have ears to hear. And so the last precept I want to read is in Ezekiel 3, starting at verse 17, because I reference how this is something that Ezekiel went through. This is something that all the prophets pretty much went through. Either it was dealing with the 2/3, both in sheep's clothing, or dealing with Esau Edom. We're all doing that in every aspect of the scriptures. We're faced with those things. So this is in Ezekiel 3 and 17. It's going specifically to when we're out there doing a diligent work, and then people don't want to or regard our message. They wave and scoff at us. We have to understand that their disbelief or their incredulity to believe shouldn't trouble us, because we are still doing our job and ultimately washing the blood off our hands. So this is in Ezekiel 3, verse 17. Son of man, I have made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore hear the word at my mouth, and give them warning from me. So it's just letting you know that this is a warning. This ain't some pleasant time in a sense that like how these other churches, Christians or Catholic churches are preaching about. We're speaking about Jacob's trouble and the hour of temptation and the MOTB that's going to be put in front of us, whether we're going to take it or not. So we're warning them from Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. So in verse 18 it says, when I say unto the wicked, thou shalt surely die, and thou givest him not warning, nor speakest to warn the wicked from his wicked way, to save his life, the same wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at thine hand. And so you coming across this ministry, you now know better. You don't have that cloak that you once had. So you being privy of this, you should be convinced now through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai to pick up a plow and help us out with this so that you get that blood off your hands. Because now you're privy to not taking the MOTB. You should warn others about that too until the elect is sealed. So I'm going to continue on. Let me see in verse 19. Yet if thou warn the wicked, and he turn not from his wickedness, nor from his wicked way, he shall die in his iniquity. So if we're out there on the highways and hedges, and we're warning them about the MOTB, giving them the breakdown, everything, but they still take the MOTB, well, they're going to be in Revelation 14 in that lake of fire, as opposed to with Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai and the elect when they're being crowned. So that's going to happen to them. But for us, it says continuing on, it says, but thou shalt, it says, but thou hast delivered thy soul. Again, when a righteous man doth turn from his righteousness and commit iniquity, and I lay a stumbling block before him, he shall die because thou hast not given him warning. He shall die in his sin, and his righteousness which he hath done shall not be remembered. But his blood will I require at thine hand. And so that's why we emphasize this MLTB. It's one of the last prophecies. And you can see everything this devil's doing because the light of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai is shining onto this person. Now he's exposed. And if you're really going to take his MLTB or trust in the shadow of Egypt, well then our hands are up and there's no blood on them. We did our job, and ultimately you're going to go to that lake of fire for taking that or trusting this devil, I should say. But with that, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rachakadash, Shalom Akim.